Yo, what's poppin'? It's Tommathan. We have my preview for the Apac play-ins happening this Saturday at 6 a.m. Eastern. Only one of these teams can make it into the playoffs. Two of them are going to go home sad. Two of them have no more season. This is the most important games of any of their seasons. This is what it all comes down to. This almost. So it's going to be interesting. The format for this is, of course, like the Charge play the Hunters, and the winner of that play the Spark, and the winner of that moves on to playoffs. So that's how that goes. It's on the same patch as the entire Countdown Cup qualifiers. Nothing new there. No surprises really. Of course, play-ins will be on the Kiriko patch, so watch out for that. Should be interesting. Before I get into this anymore, let me know down below who you think is going to make it out. And if they do make it out, whoever makes it out, do you think they're actually going to have a decent run in the playoffs, or is this just a competition to see who goes out first? Worth considering. So, first up, Chengdu Hunters. They have Jinmu, Leave, Gaga, Daisy, Nisha, and Monk. Their record, 2-4, not looking great. It was really good at the start, beating the Spark 3-1 and the Charge 3-2. But from there, there was just 4 losses. Seoul 3-1, Valiant 3-2, Philly 3-1, and Shanghai 3-0. So classic Chengdu. They're going to start off strong, look like they're going to do something, and then suddenly just doesn't come together at the end or even in the middle. It kind of falls apart. The thing about Chengdu, of course, other than just like having it and then not having it, is they started with playing a lot of Gaga, because Gaga is better than Daisy. I think it's pretty confident, pretty easy to say that they're a better team with Gaga in. But as the meta moved, you get a lot of Diva, you get a lot of Zarya. The Winston kind of falls out of favor. It's not that the Winston falls out of favor, but you can't play him only. If you want to play the Winston, you have to also be flexible to the Diva, to the Zarya. So it doesn't really fit Gaga. His other off tanks are just not good enough in this meta to keep up. So you have to bring in Daisy, and that has some concerns because Daisy hasn't been the best at Diva or Zarya. I think his Sigma's been fine. I think his Sigma's been up to par, but his Diva and his Zarya to me feel like they've not quite been at the same level as some of these other top tanks in APAC. Specifically like Piggy. You also have Fury. I would say he's not up to par. I think he's just not been there. So that kind of hurts them. And then you had the backline, which looked really good at the beginning. You had Nisha Monk popping off, getting a lot of peel, living so well, and doing a lot for the team, adding a lot of value. That just stopped happening. So I don't know if that was a specific pop-off moment for them in that first week, or if something about the team structure changed that stopped them from being able to have the same success. But that just hasn't been there the same way. They haven't been awful, but they haven't stepped up. And then with the DPS line between Jinmu and Leave, it almost feels like a bit of a roulette. Sometimes you can Leave on the Sombra, Jinmu on the Sombra, on the Tracer, on the Genji. They feels like they're all over the place. One thing that is the only consistent thing is that Leave is the only one that plays Sojourn, and they play it pretty consistently. I would say you put him on the Sojourn, but it doesn't feel like there's any real rhyme or reason for which one's on which where. And I guess that's kind of like a bonus of having them be so flexible, because they Leaf, of course, can play every flex DPS. Jinmu can play any flex DPS you want in this meta. So it kind of helps, but it also is like, I think you want to settle down and determine what you want here for sure. So Chengdu, they look okay, but they don't look very strong. I will say they looked like one of the bottom half. They're in the bottom half of APAC after this performance for sure. Then we're looking at the Charge. So Charge have Choisewan, Aprita, Jimmy, Krong, Piggy, Xerneas, and Farway, and their record is 4-2. They lose to Chengdu 3-2, lose to Shanghai beat Shanghai 3-2. Then you lose to Seoul 3-0, and then you have 3 wins: 3-2 against the Fusion, 3-1 against the Valiant, and 3-0 against the Spark. So Charge had a very good stage, and they just kind of built on it. Because at the beginning, you would just play the Zarya only. You just play Zarya comps. Krong's firmly on the bench, by the way. Aprita not seeing any playtime either. It's been firmly Jimmy that way as well. So at the beginning, you just had the Zarya comps. You would just play the Reaper. Or no, you would just play the Genji Sojourn. You'd play some Sombra every now and then. And you would just kind of lose if you get a map like King's Row. You get a map like Route 66 Second, where you just wouldn't be able to contest the high grounds without the Reaper, and the Reaper comp wasn't very strong. So they oftentimes didn't play with that. So that they did struggle on those kind of maps, and it felt like they would just lose depending on whatever the map type is. But since then, especially in the last week, they have played the Diva, and it's looked good. So they don't have that problem anymore. They don't have that map type issue, which is what I think is largely the reason they lose to the Hunters is just because the map type didn't work out for them. They just lost on the maps where they were supposed to lose with their composition. That's not a problem anymore. You're not going to be able to choose wins out of that, and especially in this format as well. Charge are the middle seed, so they will get the map pick over the Chengdu Hunters. You can't choose a map pick out of them anyway. They're going to be able to always go to the map after a loss that suits them best, and that's huge for a team like this. Where yeah, their default comp is pretty good, but I would still say the Zarya comp is stronger. So I don't have any doubts there. Another thing that surprised me in this last week, Xerneas just pops off on the Zenyatta. Unprecedented. Their backline looks fantastic in this stage, especially with this double flex support. I had no idea he had that in him. And honestly, Xerneas and Faraway making the Hunters look silly for dropping them. But I understand where they dropped them. It wasn't like a poor decision at the time, I don't think. But right now, in hindsight's 2020, man, and it looks like Xerneas and Faraway, they have the visions. So they're looking great there. I don't have any problems with Piggy. You see the Pigston sometimes on like Ilios Well. He brings out the Pigston. It honestly doesn't look that bad either. It doesn't look like a Gouchway Winston. It doesn't look like a Smurf Winston, but it looks suitable. And sometimes that's all you need. It looks good there. And looking at the DPS line between Choice A1 and Jimmy, I can't say enough good things about Choice A1. I think he's insane. I think he might be the best DPS in this entire bracket between these teams. And I am a Spark fan and a Shy enjoyer. And I just said Choice A1 might be the best DPS out of everyone. And they have the reigning MVP currently until Proper wins it. Spoiler, should be Proper. And leave over there. So that is very high praise from me. And it's just real. His Genji is elite. And that's all you need. His Tracer is also elite. Immaculate work from Choice A1. And then you have Jimmy, who has his highs, has his lows, but to me, very inconsistent. Seems like you kind of want him to pop off. And he's much compared to Leave and Shy on the other side. He's definitely not up to their par. He has his moments, as he does. He does have some fucking every now and then, but it's not on a consistent basis. Luckily, the Charge don't seem to need that because even on his off games, they play pretty good. Jimmy is like, if Jimmy pops off, it's like an extra bonus for the Charge. And honestly, I'm not sure if they need that to even make it out of this little play-in. They'll need it for playoffs, but for this little play-in, not sure if they will. And then looking at the Spark real quick, they have a large roster. Shy, Architect, Pineapple, Alpha Yi, Gouchway, Bernard, Super Rich, Irony, Neko, and Teru. And they have played a lot of these guys. Architect hasn't seen any play, and Super Rich hasn't seen any play. But other than that, every single member on that team, on that 10 roster, 8 members have played. So looking at their record, 1-5, and also they're only 2-10 in the second half of the season. Really poor performance in the back half. So they lose to everyone. Lose to Chengdu 3-1, Philly 3-1, Shanghai 3-2, Valiant 3-2. You beat the Seoul Dynasty 3-2, and then you lose to the Charge 3-0 the next day. Unreal how you beat the Seoul Dynasty and then you just look awful the next day. No idea how that happens. So the thing with Spark, they were obviously in a panic. They bring in Neko Teru for this last stage, and it doesn't really look very good. Neko looks like maybe the worst main support in the entire league that's being played. Not sure why he's here at all. He's here for 2 weeks, and then they decide, you know what, we'll bring in Irony and Teru. Good decision. Teru looks really good against the Seoul Dynasty. Unreal game. He looked pretty good with Neko beside him, honestly, in the first 2 weeks. I didn't have any problem with Teru. But whenever you have the absolutely atrocious performance on your main spot beside you, it's going to make you look worse. So I don't have a problem with Teru, but Neko did have a problem with. Teru pops off against the Dynasty. Doesn't happen against the Charge. Xerneas just diffs him entirely, which you probably don't want a main support to diff you on Zen in that spectacular of a fashion. But even then, against that Charge match, Spark looked their best when Teru was able to find a couple picks, was able to perform quite good. That's when they look best. So maybe they're going to focus on trying to get Teru in the zone, and that could help them in this play-in as well. Then we look at the tank line. You were playing some Gouchway at the beginning, but mostly Bernard now after that first week. And Bernard has looked good. I don't think there's ever a problem with Bernard. To me, his Diva looks great. His Zarya looks great. And that's the biggest thing with the Spark is they have they shouldn't be bad. Look at this roster. It should be a very good roster. It should be a good team. They have no business being this poor. But something is just not clicking right now. And it just isn't working out. And I think it kind of holds across the entire roster. It's not one person's fault after you take out Neko. It's not one person's fault, and even then, it's not all Neko's fault. He's not being put into a place to succeed either. Coming in as a coach, he hasn't played for the past year competitively. He comes in, that's like an unreasonable ask to come in and play at an Overwatch League level on a struggling team. That's a really hard ask for Neko, but I don't know. This team's just not clicking. And then the DPS line, you are playing Alpha E on the Tracer beside Shy. You give that up. Played Pineapple this last week. Pineapple has an unreal game against the Dynasty. Looks really good. Absolutely crazy on the Tracer. But it's not there against the Charge. Similar to Teru. It's just not there. So I don't know. I thought Soul didn't have an off game. They looked pretty good to me. I thought Spark just played up to it. I was like, oh, they're back. They just lose to the Charge just easily. And Shy hasn't had that performance that he needs to. I'm not putting this on Shy because he's still playing well. He's still finding good picks on the Sojourn. His Sombra is pretty good. I think his Sombra is similar to Lip Sombra in a way that, like, it's not like Fitz, where Fitz makes a really smart plays and controls the tempo a lot and just knows what's going to happen. He's more of a, like, I'm going to go into your backline, I'm going to assassinate the guy, I'm going to use my mechanics to outskill you on the Sombra. And he's not near Lip's caliber, I'm not going to say that, but it's kind of it's like a downgraded Lip on the Sombra. And I don't think you want Shy to be on the Sombra. You need him to be in that carry role because he is the star of your team. I just don't want to see him on it in general. I'd rather see him play the Sojourn anyway, to be honest. Just let him go. Just do what you can to put Shy into a place to succeed. Because if he's not in a place to carry you, you're not going to go very far on the Spark. That's just how it's been the entire season. And if you try to change that up at the last moment, I don't think the team's going to find success. I do agree with putting Pineapple in over Alfie. He wasn't impressing me at all. So I think that's a good decision. So we have 3 teams. That's the gist of it. Now I'm going to talk about the actual matchups more specifically, I guess. This video is running a little later than I thought, but whatever. So first up, Hunters against the Charge. I think this goes to the Charge for me because I talked about how, like, if we look at the Hunters, they beat these 2 teams. So you'd think, oh, using the results, the Hunters should make it out of play-ins. Yeah, but not actually. Because they got that win over the Charge by playing the map pool. And they can't do that, and it wouldn't even be effective anymore anyway with how the Charge has improved as the stage has gone on. I think there's too many question marks there. I think the Charge look too sound overall. The only weakness being maybe your hitscan player, maybe your Sombra player with Jimmy. Some inconsistencies there. That's the only real weakness you can really point out on this roster. Whereas as the Hunters, you had that tank weakness. The backline's not been up to par with Xerneas far away. Jinmu has some inconsistency still. Yeah, there's times where he looks like the best Genji in the world. He can keep up with some of the best Tracers. But unless he gets that, he could get that, and we could get All-Star Jinmu, and suddenly it looks really good for the Hunters. But even then, is All-Star Jinmu good as average Choice A1? I'm going to say barely better. But if you get Choice A1 on a good day, which is most of his days, I still give the edge to Choice A1. So I don't even think that can help them. So I'm going with the Charge, and then I think the Charge probably beat the Spark as well, because I think that they just should. The Spark have looked horrible. They haven't had anything together for the past 2 stages. It's been the only last time they looked good was the Mid-Season Madness tournament. And even then, that was off of pocketing Shy harder than anyone has ever been pocketed before. And he was on the Sojourn in a meta that suited him. You weren't fooling around with your backline, losing confidence so much that you're just willing to drop them out. I don't know. I think I definitely favor the Charge a lot. Because Shy's not in that position to succeed. Spark look bad. I don't want them to make it. Straight up. I'm a Spark fan. Don't want them to make it. They should not be rewarded for losing almost every game in the back half except for 2. I just don't think they deserve it. They aren't playing like they deserve it. Now, there's a chance that individually they pop off and perform like they did against the Seoul Dynasty. There's always that chance with the Spark because that's how talented their players are. But I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will happen either. It hasn't happened for a while. Happens one time against the Seoul Dynasty. Don't think it'll happen against the Charge. So my pick is the Charge. I think they have a legitimate shot of making a pretty decent run here. I think they look really good. Huge fan of everything on this roster. Maybe you get a meta where Prita comes in. We'll see what he can do in the playoffs. But they look like a really solid team and a really scary team. Because Piggy's having an unreal stage. I didn't talk enough about Piggy. He's having an unreal performance. By far one of the best Zaryas in Apac right now. So anyway, some Subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. Like this video if you like it. I do try to upload daily. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a good one, and deuces.